For more now on tonight's Zika topic is Mark Latham, Director of the Manatee County Mosquito Control District, Matt Smith, his counterpart in Sarasota County, and Dr. Kyle Garner. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Where did this thing come from? It's one of those things that as a layman, you hear about it months ago for the first time and think, well, this will probably go away in a few days. It hasn't, and it's gotten bigger.
Well, I mean, we're seeing this more and more with the travel that people are doing around the world. These viruses occur in remote locations. People are visiting, it's being transported elsewhere where there are active vectors, and with the speed of travel that we have, it's getting around the world.
Now, Doctor, I'm going to jump to you for a second here.
Sure.
Are your patients, you're an OB/GYN, are your patients concerned about this at all?
Absolutely. They want to know whether or not the virus is here in Sarasota. They want to know how to prevent it. They want to know about the potential effects of their unborn child and what to do to prevent it and make sure that they have a healthy pregnancy.
What do you tell them? What can you tell them?
Well, the most important thing is to look at their travel risks, where they're going to be in endemic areas and whether they're going to get exposed, and then just prevention issues, how to prevent being bitten by the mosquito and how to reduce their risk for transmission.
Matt, what is Sarasota County doing so far about Zika?
Well, we have protocols in place to deal with either introduced or locally acquired cases of Zika or dengue or chikungunya, which are closely related diseases that exploit the same mosquito species for transmission. But one of the biggest things we're doing is public outreach, because these mosquitoes, we're really only concerned with two species that are closely related. They breed in containers and little cryptic breeding sites in your backyard. They don't fly very far, and they're relatively easy to control if people would actually take the time to search their backyards and dump out containers and make sure there's no standing water. So what we're trying to do most aggressively, instead of going out and spraying chemicals everywhere or anything like that, we're trying to get people to pay a little more attention to their own environment so that they can decrease the populations quickly and easily all over the county by themselves.
Same thing in Manatee County, Mark?
Same thing in Manatee County. I've been doing this for 36 years, and it is the main method of trying to control this mosquito, because it is a backyard mosquito. But unfortunately, we always find that it falls on deaf ears. I mean, it sounds like a simple solution. Get everyone to police their own yard, empty containers, but we don't know how to get the message across more strongly than we are.
They're not taking it seriously yet?
They're not taking it seriously. And one thing I would say about that is, people are saying, well, there isn't any Zika here yet. We don't know. It's a virus which 4 out of 5 people are asymptomatic. So I would always advise people, treat it as if it is here. Take precautions as if it is here, and do what you need to do.
Yeah, Matt, we did have a case in Charlotte County. Do you know much about that?
No, other than there was a travel-associated case, but we've had quite a few of those, few hundred of those around the state.
And when you say travel-related, it means somebody went overseas and came back here with it?
Correct. The disease was contracted by a mosquito bite in another country. They came back here, became symptomatic, were tested, and were tested positive. And that's when mosquito control agencies like Sarasota or Manatee County, what we'll typically do is when we get word of a travel-associated case, we like to go in the area and set specialized traps that trap specifically for the species of mosquito that transmits it, because we want to understand a threat level, like what is the population of that mosquito looking like, and if it's high enough, do we need to initiate control measures? Do we need to get boots on the ground to start knocking on doors and asking people to dump containers?
When we say overseas, are the biggest threats Central and South America, Doctor?
Yeah, primarily Brazil is the area where the largest outbreak is currently. We see outbreaks also in Puerto Rico, which is more regionally close, so people travel to that area as well. Haiti is where the lady here who had the first case in Florida with microcephaly. So those are the places where we see these patients traveling to, bringing it back into the country, and then potentially the concern is that eventually they will result in an exposure through the mosquito population to a regional person here.
Well, the timing couldn't be worse to have the Olympics right now in Brazil next month.
It is an issue.
One of the co-hosts of a morning program on the networks is pregnant, and she's not going to go with the network to cover it because she's afraid of being exposed to Zika as a pregnant woman.
Absolutely, and we know that the virus itself, primarily, we believe that the greatest risk is in the first trimester, but we're seeing second and third trimesters still result in effects to the fetus, including microcephaly. So we don't know that there's a safe time to travel. We know that even the risks afterwards may persist in their partners afterwards for up to 6 months potentially. And how that translates to a risk to a woman and her unborn child, we still don't know yet.
Mark, what does this remind you of? You've been in this business now for over 35 years, you said.
Yeah.
What does this remind you of?
Well, we've been seeing it more and more now. I mean, we had chikungunya only 2 years ago, which it followed the same path. I mean, basically came into an area where it was unknown. So the population is what we call naive. I mean, they have never been exposed to it before, so they can get it. And that means there'll be a massive explosion when that happens.
But we hear of Zika already much more than the other one you just mentioned.
Right, and the reason for that is that the problem with pregnant women and children, I mean, the unborn child, I mean, that has changed the game completely. Chikungunya was mostly a painful disease, but adults got it and you got over it. It didn't affect unborn children. Zika is actually milder in adults than chikungunya or dengue, but it's the issue with unborn children that makes this such a nightmare.
I actually heard half an hour ago before I came in the studio that there was a Zika-related death in Utah this past week. You want to Google that, another travel-related situation. How about you, Matt? What does this remind you of? Perhaps encephalitis years ago?
Oh, yeah. My career's a little younger than my counterpart here. I really got into this business right when West Nile was hitting, so I went through all of that. But also, since I've been here in Florida, we've had introductions of chikungunya. There have been localized outbreaks of dengue in the Keys and in Miami. So I've always kept up with those things.
And unfortunately, Florida does not have a seasonal issue. This is a year-round issue, Doctor.
It is. The mosquito lives here year-round primarily, and so we're going to continue to have to deal with this going on in the future. So we'll just see where it goes.
Are we at the point now that you are recommending we don't travel to certain spots?
Sure. If you are pregnant or if you are looking to become pregnant in the near future, we do restrict the travel in those areas. And if you do go, make sure that you do the preventative measures while you're there, wearing long sleeve clothing and using DEET-containing insecticides, repellents, because they are safe to use in pregnancy.
Mark, what are the symptoms if somebody thinks that they have this?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor, so it's not my specialty, but typically it's a low-grade fever. Then you'll get a rash, which can cover the whole of your body. In fact, I was down in Puerto Rico working with the CDC, and one of the members of the team down there contracted Zika, and he had a rash over his whole body from feet to his neck. And he said that was the worst thing, that it was very itchy, very irritant.
Right, and this I did some research. This began in Uganda, 1947. That's right. But somehow it's gone from a snowflake to a real snowball here. Do you have any idea what caused it to explode?
Globalization.
It is, exactly right. It's the ease of people traveling from one country to the other and bringing a virus that is localized into an area where the naive population allows it to explode very quickly.
It's the downside of globalization.
It is.
Many upsides, and there's the downside right there.
Correct.
Is there talk someday of a shot or a pill against this?
They're working on vaccines right now to try and do that, but unfortunately right now we don't have any medications that are able to treat it like some of the others. It's really just symptomatic treatment. And then surveillance in pregnancy for women who may have a risk factor. Watching for fetal growth, making sure that the head develops normally, and then evaluation afterwards with either serum testing or diagnostic confirmation testing.
Now, let's check your crystal ball. Do you think years from now this is going to remain part of our everyday life, or this might ideally fade away? Or is the toothpaste out of the tube, it's not going to go away?
It's not going to go away. I think we'll continue to see occasional outbreaks as time goes on, but we have excellent control measures here in the United States that allow us to control these kinds of diseases much more readily than some of the third world countries. So I think it'll be a nuisance that occurs, but as long as we're aware of it and we have gentlemen like you guys on top of it, we'll be able to control it very well.
Okay. And I think another thing is that when you get these explosive epidemics in the Caribbean and South America, once the majority of the population has had the disease and they're now immune, it'll die down, so our risk of having imported cases will be much lower. And this happened with chikungunya. We had an explosion 2 years ago. We don't hear much about it now. We don't see so many cases.
I hope it goes the same way with Zika. And guys, we're out of time, so thank you, Mark, Matt, Dr. Garner. Thanks for being here on this Friday evening.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Up next, some of your comments on last night's program. Stay with us.